think in the beginning, at least, I saw self-management as something that's radically different.
Yeah.
And the more research I've done, both action research, actually trying to do things, but also the research, reading up on things, it seems like we do create hierarchy again and again. And so I think what I am reacting against, not that you said that, but I still see a lot of writing that goes, hierarchy is just stupid. It's not needed in any way. And I disagree. It is needed. It is helpful. It just doesn't have to be power over, right? That's the difference. The power over versus power with.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of The How. I'm Francesca Pick, founding partner of Greaterthan. In this episode, I speak to Michael Arnoldus, who has over 3 decades of experience building software and leading engineering teams. He has a background in agile and has led large-scale agile transformations as a CTO. His work has always focused on how to navigate the complex intersection of business, technology, and human collaboration. Now, the work that I met him through, and the reason that we connected for this conversation, is because Michael has been deeply engaged for the past 20 years in exploring self-management, both as a personal practice and as an organizational principle. He's been doing this with a very holistic perspective, building not only on his background in software architecture, but also psychotherapeutic training and meditation. He's been on quite a journey with self-management, which we also go through in this conversation, from excitement to doubt, and I would say even disillusionment. This made for a very thought-provoking conversation for me about his experience in applying self-management in a lot of different contexts, including his current workplace in the shipping industry. Some of the questions we dive into are, what are the conditions needed for self-management to actually work? When does this approach reach its limits? How does it look, especially in larger organizations? And what is the role of a high-trust environment? And what do we do when that's not the case? Finally, my favorite topic, we dive into the role of leadership and hierarchy in the context of self-management, and also talk about Michael's personal journey with this. This conversation was a real treat, and I hope you enjoy it too.
We all want a different relationship with the work we do for our livelihood. But where might we start? What might we try? How do we do it? What if it was possible to radically transform how you work together with others? To find meaning and impact together with your peers, to consciously organize how you start up, grow, or transform your organization? The answer is yours to discover in the what, the why, and the how. It's time to practice a new kind of leadership, to interrogate hierarchy, wrangle with power and centralized decision-making, and subtract management from change. You don't have to wait for the future of work. We're already broadcasting it here and now on The How.
I'm really excited to be here today with Michael Arnoldus. How are you, Michael?
I'm good. Thanks for asking, Fran. I'm good. I'm a little bit nervous about this, but let's go. Let's see how it works.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I'm really excited to reconnect with you after quite a lot of years. And one of the things that I like to do at the beginning of these episodes is to just briefly talk a little bit about how we actually know each other. And it goes quite a few years back.
Yep.
Do you remember the first time that we met and what was going on?
As far as I remember, we met in New Zealand for this summer social, or what do you call it, Summerfest there with Inspire. And there was a lot of new people to get to meet and a lot of super interesting people. And we had a conversation, or a lot of people had a conversation about how to work with finance. Mm-hmm. And even though it's not been a big thing in my life, I found that very interesting. How do we work with finance? And especially how do we use the Inspired Product Co-Budget and move that into something that might actually be useful?
Yeah, exactly. And I think so. Maybe just to give a bit of context to our listeners, so Inspiral is a network that has gone through many different evolutions. It started sort of as a network of people who wanted to work on things that matter, of social entrepreneurs, change makers. It's still around, and it's been a really key thing. And I think, yeah, bringing us and many other people together. And actually, what I recall, which is quite fun, is that so the weeks before that Summerfest, I had been working with Jessie Kate Schlinger on this new idea, on basically how to take co-budget, this collaborative budgeting tool that had been developed in Spiral, to the next level. And it was just that in that moment, as Greaterthan was sort of brewing as an idea, and at the Summerfest we had sort of pitched this idea of like the ecosystem of collaborative finance and all the things that we were maybe going to do within that. And I remember you coming up right after that session that we ran, and being all excited, and then us sort of, yeah, deciding to jump into more collaboration.
I was super excited, and especially around collaboration around finance. I do think that's very interesting, and useful, and really hard to do in traditional organizations. Right? I've been spending most of my life in more traditional organizations, and finding a way to do that, and even experimenting with that, I found very exciting and challenging as well.
Yes. And that was obviously also why we were so drawn to it, because it was challenging.
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously we then went into much further collaboration around the co-budget project, I guess, which lasted like a year and a half or so, until then you went off to focus on some other projects. But what I'm quite curious about is actually self-management as a sort of area of work, and I guess Teal, that you also sort of got involved in, and that it's been like, I guess I would say, a way that you bridging between technology and like teams and org dev has really come together. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about like, how did you get introduced to this world of self management, and how has your relationship with that evolved over the years, and like what have you been learning and experimenting with that?
Okay, that's a big question.
Yeah.
I think my introduction to self-management actually came pretty early on with this thing that was called agile, or actually it was Scrum before it was called agile. So around 98, to quite a few years ago. And there was, wow, finally somebody is thinking thoughts that make sense, rather than we do these processes that do not work. And we are now asking people to use their common sense and to actually think about how they're doing and how they're working together, and create teams that are supposed to collaborate rather than just take orders. So that was my initial, this makes sense, right? It's an embodied kind of, this really makes sense. This is how I want to work. This is what I've been looking for. And then as I got more and more into agile and developing software, it also became clear that the whole complex around consultancies that happened around agile was kind of moving in the wrong direction. Mm-hmm. So I was interested in, how do we change that so we go back to the original idea? Mm. And then Frederick Laloux did his book, and Teal was introduced, and I was like, wow, this is it. This is the thing. And I was still very much believing that self-management could be completely self-sustaining, right? So there was a little bit of a thought about, it seems that everywhere that this happens, there's still someone who drives it. Mm-hmm. So how do we connect the idea of, we can just figure things out by ourselves, with, it still seems like some kind of leadership or setting of context is important. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the bigger questions I've been having. And the other question is this even possible without some kind of skin in the game? Mm-hmm. Either by people owning their own organizations, which we've seen actually can work really well. But can it work if you don't own the organization, and if you are just a normal employee? And I'm still not sure about that, right? I'm seeing some ideas from self-management, some ideas around Teal, great ideas. I think the main thing that makes sense for me is that we use our common sense, which it turns out is not that common all the time. Yeah. And we use this thought about relationship, right? That I think that's been even more important. So yes, we need the structures, and yes, we need some kind of leadership, but we also need actual relationship to relate to each other.
Yeah, and that can often be the hardest part, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So I'd love to I guess dig a bit deeper into this. And I'm curious because I remember you were working with an organization called Blackwood 7. I
Yep.
feel like that was a context where you were especially also bringing in self-management practices, and then also now in the company you've been working in shipping, you've been sort of experimenting with that.
And
Can
there's
you
even been
give
a
us
company between those. So there was Blackwood
yeah.
7 and then Good Monday and now in shipping. Yep. Yep.
So, I mean, I'd love to just, yeah, hear a little bit more like anecdotes, experiences. Like, how has it been in those? Are there stories of things that you've tried and done in those different contexts? Sort of maybe going from
Sure.
the furthest back to today.
So in Blackwood 7, I worked with people who had the same basic idea, right? I worked with someone, the CTO at Blackwood 7 was someone who strongly believed in self-management and we were trying to implement that in Blackwood 7.
And what were they doing again?
They were building a predictive model of how to use your funding when you're supposed to do big campaigns, like big
Okay.
marketing campaigns, right? How much
Right.
money should you spend on video? How much money should you spend on newspapers? And
Right.
so
They were
how
kind
do
of like
we,
an agency, right? Like a digital
it's
agency.
like an agency, but it was building software so
Okay.
that would take over what an agency would normally do. So yes.
Cool. Yeah.
Um, and and I think we got pretty far with making that work. Uh, it's still a challenge. It was still a challenge because some people are not super comfortable with that, but the entire leadership group was, or at least the technical leadership group was comfortable with trying this out. I started out a developer hub in Barcelona, and we had 2 up to 3 teams there, and working with that. But it was also clear that at that point I was very much you are now self-managing. Go do what you're supposed to be doing. You have the freedom. I'm sure you have the wisdom to figure out what's the right thing. And that worked for some teams, but not for others.
Hmm.
So it was interesting to see the difference between teams that really rose to the occasion, did the best thing that they could, and other teams that just completely destroyed themselves in infinite discussions and a lack of direction.
And were there any patterns that you noticed of like which teams it worked for and which it did not?
It felt more random
Yeah.
actually. I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't. I wouldn't. If you told me today, so what are the criteria? How are you going to build a team that's going to work? I wouldn't be able to say so. I
Yeah.
mean, I'd be able to define certain criteria that would say those are minimal. That's the minimal thing that we need to do, right? So I can start to say what wouldn't work,
Uh-huh.
but I can't say exactly what would work.
Yeah. So what are those criteria? Those minimal criteria where you say if you don't have those, it definitely doesn't even have a chance of working.
So first of all, people need to be pretty mature. And what does that mean? It is so I know the Greaterthan works with trauma informed work, or how do you work with trauma? There is something about there can't be too much trauma, not even in a single individual, because that will completely derail the process.
Hmm.
So there's a minimum level of maturity for the people that are there. I tend to think there also need to be some kind of direction, and that direction either comes from you have skin in the game, so you kind of know what it is that we're trying to do, or somebody setting a direction from the outside that's saying this is our goal, and go with that. And not, it doesn't have to be super detailed, right? But some kind of context. These are the boundaries. This is the direction we're going for, and either that comes from themselves because there's a personal interest, skin in the game, or it comes from the outside. I would
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
the willingness to collaborate, which is also to a certain degree an individual thing.
Uh-huh.
That people are interested in that, and some people are not. And then, and maybe this is back to the trauma thing. Some people, it turns out, and this actually comes from a later experience. Some people, it turns out, are so afraid of not doing the right thing, and maybe there is even a level of shame involved, that they're uncomfortable with giving that much freedom. They would rather be told what to do, and because then they can't fail, or right, it's I have to do this thing and I know that I can do that, but if I'm giving too much space, I don't know how to do that. And I actually think the people who are giving me that space are trying to make me fail, right? So there's a level of fear that's so high that it becomes too difficult.
Yeah, and so the other side of the coin is that there's basically not enough trust, right,
Yes.
in
Yep.
the culture, or also the individuals, maybe because of their past experiences, right? That they're afraid that
Yep.
they can't fail and that they will get fired, or yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's been clear to me also that I've been very fortunate in my own life. And I've been, since I was a kid, a lot of trust has been given to me. I've been in schools that were allowing you to do whatever you wanted. If you find something interesting, go learn that. If you do something else, that's also fine.
Yeah,
So it's been part of my life for a very long time.
yeah,
And it's so easy to project that, this is how I would like to work. So I'm sure everybody else would like to work in the same way.
yes,
And it's not true.
yeah,
So realizing that people come with different backgrounds and need to work with those backgrounds and need to maybe get into a completely different way of working because they've been told their entire life, by their teachers, by their parents, by their employers, you have to do what I tell you to do. And now suddenly you're getting into a place where, oh, you can do whatever you like, kind of, as long as it makes a bit of sense. It's too unusual. It's too weird.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's sort of a general challenge with this model, and how it sort of is countercurrent to a lot of the systems that many of us, at least in like Western
Yeah,
hemisphere, yeah, cultures, Northern hemisphere cultures have been raised, right? And so we're just used to that. We're conditioned in that sort of parent-child dynamic everywhere, right?
exactly. Yeah. And it seems like some people would actually prefer that feels safer, right? That I have a parent to relate to. They will tell me when I'm doing something good or something that's not good, because it's too dangerous to try to figure out what I think is a good thing. That's
So I'm curious about this one, because when you say people prefer that, I've often wondered about this. Like, do they prefer it out of this a little bit of a trauma reaction when you say there's fear, right? Like they're not in that place of spaciousness, of trust, of having been in that for a long time. So do you really think that some people just actually do not prefer that? Or if they were in these other ideal conditions for long enough, that they would maybe actually open up to preferring or liking that other option?
We get born as super curious, and we would like to investigate what makes sense for us, right? If you any kid,
Yeah,
you see that they want to, and they're going to tell their grown-ups, back off, I'm going to tie my own shoes, I'm going to do my own thing. And
absolutely.
it's really nice that you're here because I want to check that I'm not left alone. But as long as you're here, I will do my own thing.
Yeah.
So do I think that that's the natural condition for human beings? Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
And I've seen, and this goes both for Blackwood 7 from Good Monday and from C, where I'm at the moment. um, when people start to realize that they have this level of freedom and that they can do what makes sense, they become engaged to a completely different level.
Yeah.
So for a lot of people, that's true.
Yeah.
I'd say for some people, the distance from where they are to get to that point is very long. And for some people, they might never want to go there. I think that's my realization, right? I think there's a little bit more humility from my side about trying to pretend what other people would really like if they got the opportunity, right? I've been a little bit, no, I know what's good for you, right? Is this a level of freedom? But I don't. And I think there's a strong need for respect, that people have different needs and they might have other challenges in their life, and this is not one of the ones that they would like to have.
Yeah.
Um,
That makes sense. And I mean, I think, we all know from having been applying a lot of these principles in our own work and in Greaterthan and the collective, it's really hard work, and it's, yeah, maybe you don't want to be putting all that effort into your work, but into
yeah.
other areas of your life, or just don't have the capacity for that.
Yeah, or I go to work and I'm being told what to do, and so technology, I'm doing a bit of coding and I'm pretty good at that, and that's good enough for me. And then I get some money and I can do something else, right? That's I don't have any ambitions to do things differently. And I think respecting that becomes increasingly important, or it's been clear to me that that's important.
Yeah. So given these insights that you've had about what's needed for self-management, even just in the minimal, right? So not in the, like, what actually needs to be there for it to definitely work. how does that make you then think about the potential for it? Also, in terms of being something that can really be used in many contexts or work in larger organizations, because I know you're in a quite large organization now in comparison. So, yeah, I know that you're in a bit of a influx, unsure moment about this, but yeah, I'd
Very
love
much.
to hear, like, yeah, how are you feeling about that now then?
I think I'm learning. So first of all, I'm learning about that. There's a sorry,
Disappeared.
go. Okay.
Um,
Can you hear me?
that's very weird. Wait, now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I hear you. I don't know if it was just me.
Okay.
Well, wait, I'm going to put a marker here. There we go. So that I can remember to cut this. Cool.
I think the context I'm in right now is different in several ways. So when I felt this self-management thing could work, I've been in smaller groups. So there are several things. It definitely works when you're building an organization where people are naturally very independent, or even small teams that are naturally very independent. So if you look at the work about the platform organization, um, Boundaryless is doing this 3EO work they're doing, which is about very independent teams that can do their own thing. It's easier, right? Because there's not a lot of connection. There's not a need for a strong level of coordination, and coordination can be done by creating technology. You can create certain tools. You have to use these tools, and then you can do whatever you want, and we'll just measure if you're successful, right? If you're on Amazon and you want to, bless you, and you want to sell coffee machines somewhere in Turkey, maybe you can set up a team and say, you have to do this, you have to connect to these tools, but then you can just go ahead. Okay, that works. That's fairly easy. If you're an independent consultancy, which I'm not quite sure how Greaterthan works these days, but different people doing different things, yes, it works easily as well, because if you can't work in it, you're just going to stop, right? It's not bringing the entire organization down. But if you're building a product, a pretty big and maybe complex product, let's say you're building a computer, right? Or you are building a software product that has a lot of components, you have a lot of different teams or people working on that, you have to distribute work and you have to get those teams to be coordinated. Then it's starting to become really hard, because that level of coordination can't, if you try to get the team to find that level of coordination themselves, it's going to take half a year before we even agree on how things is going to work. So it makes sense to have some level of hierarchy that defines, and it can be, the model that I'm using is that if we were firefighters and we wanted to extinguish a fire in a wood, right? I'd probably send a guy up in a helicopter to see what's going on, and that person would direct the people on the ground.
Yeah.
That does not mean that now the guy in the helicopter is their boss. In a sense, they can command or they can fire people. It's just like, we have someone here who is coordinating.
Yeah.
And so the idea of self-management as being without hierarchy does not make sense for me. It does in very small settings, but in a larger setting, it doesn't.
And is that how you understood it to be, self-management? Because I
Yeah,
guess that's
I
usually
think
what
for
I say
me
is sort of a myth.
it was anarchy, right? It's just like, this is a high level goal, figure out the rest yourself. That was the thing that I thought would work. That was how I
Oh,
worked
right.
with it in
Okay.
the
Okay.
beginning, right?
I
And
don't
now
think I
it's
ever
not.
thought that would work.
Okay, good. It doesn't. um, I, I,
Because I guess what was interesting here is like, in Greaterthan, also in our work, we often talk about how, like, of course, you need structures, you need clear areas of accountabilities and roles, and who can make different types of decisions for certain areas, because otherwise that coordination is absolutely impossible. And I even would probably say that, like, there's a certain type of hierarchy, often I would say, related to like creative fields and source work, that is actually really, really helpful. But it has a different quality than like traditional management structures. And I think there's something like, actually, the example of the fire in the helicopter, and I think my understanding is that in the Ukraine-Russia war. There's been examples as well where you look at if the decision-making power is as close as possible to where something is happening, that is what is effective, right? Like you don't want the manager to be, many layers up the chain far away. Like that's not going to lead to a good decision, right? Of
Agree.
course, you need someone who's calling the shots, who's helping be clear, especially in an emergency, but they need to be close to the scene, right? They need to see the
Absolutely.
fire.
But we've known that for 100 years, right? That's for me. That is that self-management. Is that much different? It's less like you have to be close to actually making the decision. So it's more like
But
this is
Michael, like
distributed
if
decision
we've
making, right?
known that, why are so many organizations set up to do exactly not that? For important decisions to be made super far away from where it's happening, not at all on the ground. Like that's the default. So it's the opposite of common sense, as you said.
It's hard. It's hard, and I think there is a lot of fear on the management level as well. There is if I so let me use myself. I've gotten to where I am because I'm good at solving problems. I know about technology. I'm really good at solving these problems. I am, and I can do that. So that means I'll go up in the hierarchy based on being really good at solving problems. So when I get to a certain level, it's really hard, and this is a very personal experience, it's really hard not to jump into solving problems. And usually
that's how you got there, right?
yes,
because you're good at that.
I'm so good that I'm usually the best. Not always, but usually I'm the best one, right? So it's very easy to say, clearly you can't figure this one out. Move us to a side, and I'll come in and I'll fix everything. It's going to be wonderful, right? And then I start realizing this doesn't work, right? It might work in a small team, but it doesn't work anymore. I have to do something else, and I have to trust other people. And I have to trust other people to do mistakes that I could see they would do. So it's painful almost to see this, right? If they just listened to all my wonderful wisdom, things would be so much better. But it isn't, because it doesn't work like that.
So I think because you can't be everywhere, right? You don't have the time in the day to solve all the problems anyway.
and maybe I'm not that good, right? I think I am, but no. So you want people in those places, but that means you have to build the organization. And that brings me into another thing, which has been quite surprising for me, because again, yes, okay, hierarchy, we need coordination, some level of coordination. So that amount of hierarchy. But you also need skills. I think I missed. So when I read Turn the Ship Around, which is, I think, is a brilliant book, you know this, right? About U.S. Santa Fe, U.S. submarine that changed the whole way of working.
Yeah.
So one of the things that he really points out that is skills are really important. It is important that people have the right skills, because again, looking at some of the stuff that I've done recently, I think I asked people to take on responsibility that they weren't capable of because they didn't have the right skills.
Yeah.
And again, I'm someone who's been, whenever I don't have the skill, I'm just jumping into things and I'm reading and I'm learning and doing whatever I can. But some people are not able to see they don't have the skills. The Dunning-Kruger effect, right? It's like, I'm super good at what I'm doing, but maybe you're not. So have I given up on self-management? To kind of go back to that part of your question, no, I haven't. But I think the preparation to do it, I think it needs to be done slowly, very carefully. Small steps at a time. Figure out, are you comfortable with this? But also training. Do you have the necessary skills to make the right decisions in this place? And here comes the thing that I'm still struggling with. So if I see that there's a need for skills, and I see that there's a need for things moving slowly, then I'm taking that control, right? I'm taking that responsibility. So is this self-management, or is it just...
What do you mean by that? What are you taking responsibility for?
I'm taking responsibility for making sure people have the right skills. I might even be taking responsibility for if people are able to get the right skills. I might even choose to say, certain people, you can't be here because you're not going to get into the place that we need you to be.
Yeah. I would argue that seems like an essential part for self-management to work, right? Because in a way, that's the role of actually creating the conditions for the team that is self-managing itself to succeed, right? And so, yeah, part of that is having the skills being sure that like there's a boundary, right, that you're holding.
Yeah. And similar to an organism, there's an immune system that's going to throw things away that's not going to work. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But then what is self-management? This easily gets very philosophical. But
Yeah.
what is self-management? Because if there's now someone, a leader, could be me, could be someone else, that's sitting there and making these decisions on behalf of the team, are they really self-managing?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they just a team, hopefully with a leader that knows a little bit about, put the decisions as close as possible to where people, to the work that's been done? But is it completely different from the way that we would normally do good work? Or is self-management just a counter reaction to really bad management?
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's a great question.
I'm sorry. This is yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question, and I think that as it often is, it's like every organization is different, and it's usually something in the middle, right? It's like not the fully traditional approach to management, nor maybe completely self-managed being the right solution. Or yeah, maybe self-management was just a temporary concept that we needed to integrate certain ideas in a more clear way. Because I think when you say, oh, just the normal way that a team works well together, like, what is that? What are those things, right? Like, that's what this is, what really matters, right? Like,
Yeah.
a team that can do good work where people are, well cared for and can develop and achieve the outcomes they're trying to get to.
Yes. And do I believe in that? Absolutely. I think in the beginning, at least, I saw self-management as something that's radically different.
Uh-huh.
And the more research I've done, both action research, actually trying to do things, but also the research, reading up on things, it seems like we do create hierarchy again and again. And so I think what I'm reacting against, not that you said that, but I still see a lot of writing that goes, oh, hierarchy is just stupid. It's completely, it's not needed in any way. And I disagree. It is needed. It is helpful. It just doesn't have to be power over, right? That's the difference. The power over versus power with. Yes, I am sitting in the helicopter. I'm doing some coordination. We're still kind of just colleagues, and we want to do the rest work together. And here comes the other thing, because I'm now CDO, right? In a small, medium company. Having actual conversations we're on the same level, adult to adult conversation with people is really hard.
Uh-huh.
There's very much a tendency that because I have the title that I have, whatever I say is going to be treated as right. Not by everyone, right? Fortunately, there are people who are going to know, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
But there's also people who will be, if the CTO tells me this is how he sees the things, then that's probably true, or at least that's what I have to do.
Yeah.
So that status difference makes it hard.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
And
guess
at the
that's a
same
question
time,
of where is that getting in the way, right?
yeah, it is getting in the way. And so part of me was like, okay, so let's get rid of titles. It's unhelpful. But then sometimes when you speak with people outside of the organizations, you really do need to. Some people want to speak to the CTO because then, either they feel very important or they want to make sure that they have, a conversation with the right person who have the right level of power. So I think we didn't, have you seen that? Have you experienced that within Greaterthan? There is a need for someone with a title.
So I think, this has been an ongoing conversation over the years in different forms. Also back in WeShare, we had that a lot. And I think there was always the one clear need, which is people needing something to signal outwards. So that's sort of like for the rest of the world to be able to interact with us, we need to sort of adapt to a certain extent to that model. So I think there's that, which is like very pragmatic often, of like, okay, what is the most helpful for us to achieve what we're trying to do? And then internally, I think there's definitely people having a need for recognition and acknowledgement. And I think there it's really about what meaning do you give to different names and roles, and like it's more about also the process of getting there, I think. And in Greaterthan, right, we have associates and partners right now. These things often are evolving. but that's more expresses the quality of engagement and how deep you are in something. And then you have all these different roles and areas and different hats that people are holding, and they need to be super clear. Like, I think to work together well, you need that clarity, but it doesn't have to be something that you're married to, that's your identity, and it's like that ladder, right? So I think there is a big difference there, and that maybe helps then break down that like fear of interacting with someone because they're above you. Or yeah, I do feel like that hopefully makes it easier to have that adult to adult relating.
Completely agree. Completely agree. And I am conscious of the fact that Greaterthan and also We Share would attract people who already have this mindset.
Absolutely.
So when you go into an organization where people do not have that mindset, actually they usually have another mindset, which is, how do I get promoted as quickly as possible so I get higher up in my career and I'm going to make more money and I'm going to have, I think, status, right? It's just like, I'm now a better person because I have this title and I'm promoted to this level. I've seen that. I see that regularly, right? That it is important. It's an important thing that now I am something more than I was yesterday. So it's a way of doing the acknowledgement and the recognition. You're doing good work because now I'm giving you a new title and you get a little bit more money, or maybe more, a lot of more money. But yeah.
So since we're talking about the topic of like hierarchies and different ways that that can show up, I think that you've also dabbled a little bit in source work. I wasn't sure how much you know about it, but I'm just sort of curious, what's your take on that? Have you been able to like apply this thinking at all, or has it influenced how you look at things?
Very much. It influences me very much. I think the clarity, I think it makes sense to me in the sense that somebody have an idea and you know what that idea is like. That part of it makes sense. The part of it, I am asking someone else to step in and help me. So there is a difference. I have this thing. I want to throw this dinner party. I want someone to help me make the salad, and I will also give the freedom to make that salad within certain boundaries because it have to fit with the rest of my menu. But you can do whatever you want. But you can't spend 7 hours because actually we had the dinner parties in 3 hours, something like that, right? So there are certain limits, there are boundaries, but I have to give that freedom. And I think that's been super helpful for me in seeing also when people are ready to step up and take ownership or not. So it is part of my daily thinking source. I don't know if, I mean, also the symbolic handover. I am sitting in a situation and I have certain responsibilities and I want to give those responsibilities away. I want to give them to someone else. It's not just, oh, you do that, because then the ownership still is with me. So I have to do something to make it really clear. I'm now handing this over and it's yours.
Yeah.
I've used that very recently to handing over some responsibilities to people and created a small symbolic session about, this is yours. Ask people to write notes, give them good luck messages, give them something so it's become clear that they feel this ownership. It's theirs.
That's really cool.
A way that I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really great inspiration, like around succession, passing on in on the small scale, right? And I think from what I've seen around that area is that having others witness that passing over is quite helpful, because then everyone sees, okay, I don't need to go to Michael anymore. I need to go to this other person.
Yeah. Yeah, and it creates a level of joy, excitement also in the person taking over, because now it's not like it's got he's going to pull it back, right? Or he's going to step in all the time, or it's really clear this is said officially in front of a lot of other people, so the expectation is now on me.
Yeah,
it makes a big difference.
That's really cool. And so I guess one thing that has often come up in our work, or that I'm often asking myself, specifically when it comes to source work, is how much or when is it helpful to actually talk about that model to the people you're working with? And when is it like, you know what, this is influencing your thinking? I think you can work with it without it being explicit, but I'm curious if you've tried out different things there.
I'm mostly working with it without being explicit. It's mostly a model that I'm using in how I think about work and how I think about collaboration, how I think about how to help each other. It works for me giving responsibilities to others, or to think about how they do that. It also works for me thinking about, in the company I'm in right now, why am I here? I'm here because I'm helping someone else do some of the things that they want to do. hopefully
Yeah.
in a way that also works for me. But so that
Exactly.
most of the time it's a model that I just use.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with the people I've been closest to and worked most with, and people I've, or specifically people I've been mentoring, I've shared that, and it seems to make sense to most people. It's like, oh, that's helpful. That's
Yeah.
because when you get into a conflict, why aren't they doing what I'm telling them to do? A question becomes, okay, if you think about the source model, have you actually passed this thing on? Have you given them that full area of responsibility, and
Yeah.
or are you still maintaining that? Have you done that work to make that transfer?
Yeah.
And yeah, and I had people call me, how was that model you were using? So I think it is possible, but it's also the way Peter Koenig talks about it sometimes becomes a little bit metaphysical or a little bit woo woo. So
Yeah.
I'm careful with how I share it
Makes total
because I
sense.
think it's super useful without
Yeah.
speaking about it explicitly.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I find that for some people the woo woo aspect works more, and then for others it's like deterring. Like it
Yeah,
really there's a broad spectrum there. Yeah. So I guess as we slowly get towards the end of our conversation, I'd be really curious to hear a little bit about where your energy is now. You know, you've been quite a few years in this shipping company, been trying out things. I guess, given also that it feels like the world is in a moment of a lot of profound change happening everywhere.
you think?
Um, and obviously that's always happening, but it's definitely
No,
intensifying.
it's different.
A
Yeah,
lot of people are, asking themselves questions about where they want to put their energy, and somehow I don't know, time seems even more precious. And maybe that's just my own perception, also as a parent. But yeah, I'm like, where are you being drawn to right now, and or what are the questions you're asking yourself?
I think the amount of changes we're seeing are so profound. It's the biggest thing in my life, right? And we're both talking geopolitical changes. We're talking about climate. We're talking about AI, which of course takes a lot of my time from a technological perspective. And I'm using my more spiritual training. So in stepping back and just really observing rather than trying to predict. Observing and just follow along and see what happens. So living this change rather than trying to predict it.
Hmm.
Of course there are trends that are becoming increasingly clear and those are interesting, but I'm also very much aware that this is about being present in what's happening all the time and seeing reality and responding to reality rather than what you think should have happened or ought to happen. Um, so that's actually most of my intellectual energy goes towards really just observing and reacting to what's happening on a very short time scale. And I mean, of course, I try to think about the future. If I if I take the way that I see things right now
Hmm.
and what I think might move towards, I think it is right now very hard to see what is uniquely human that will not be taken over. I think that's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
I mean, some things AI can't do at the moment, but it will.
Hmm.
But there are still things that we need as human beings.
Yeah.
And there are still things that we can do which is uniquely human. And I have certain ideas what that could be, but that's an interesting question.
Hmm.
And I think that even if we try to tie that back into self-management, I think it requires even more mature individuals that are willing to be present in the situation and evaluate the situation as it evolves rather than people really good just to do what they're told, because the do what you're told is being taken over right now.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I see what you mean. To me it also seems like it's not just like what is it that is uniquely human that we can keep doing, but what is it that we want to keep doing,
Absolutely.
right? Because just because AI can do many other things doesn't mean that we should let it.
No, no. I mean, you're right.
Yeah.
We shouldn't let it. But when I see big tech companies basically controlling AI as it is at the moment, And I see the moral of some of the people controlling this. I'm like, this could end very bad.
Yeah.
So how will that evolve?
Yeah.
That's I mean, because it will, right? One way or the other, it will
Yeah.
change. But maybe not in the best way we could hope for.
Yeah. We will see.
We
As you
will
said,
see.
be
We will see.
present and I guess,
Yeah.
yeah,
And have
see what
fun
it
on the
will
way,
look
right?
like.
Because all of this stuff, sometimes it's frustrating, but it's wonderful, right? It's wonderful to be part of seeing, how are things evolving at the moment, and how can we help each other, right? So we're back to the relationship part, which I think is increasingly important. I am, you asked about source work.
Yeah.
I'd say one of the people that I also return to again and again is Miki Kashtan,
Yeah.
and her work. I
Yes.
think that is very inspiring. How do we get to deeply respect each other and make agreements that fulfill needs? I think that part is very interesting, and actually maybe the more interesting outcome of the self-management movement, at least for me.
Yeah. No, it's really great that you mentioned her because we've definitely been collaborating quite closely with her and her organization, NGL, and it's been extremely inspiring.
Yeah, she is very inspiring.
Yeah. So, yeah, as we come to a close, is there anything that you still feel like you'd like to share, I guess, about your journey, where you're at, or um, knowing that the theme of this sort of mini series is sort of leadership journeys, which I feel like you've touched a lot on different elements of how you've changed your approach to leading or what you're maybe struggling with. But maybe we could just close on any other reflection you have on that of like, where you see yourself heading in your leadership energy.
I think I started leadership journey with a personal experience about leadership often being bad and not being great. So I've spent a lot of my energy giving space and freedom to people. I think I've undervalued the need for also creating clarity and sometimes boundaries and sometimes setting really clear this is what's needed. So very much in the setting free rather than setting a direction. And I think I'm right now finding the balance between, on one hand, setting direction, but without killing we still want great relationship. We still want people to be able to do the very best of work that they're capable of by working together.
Yeah.
So finding that balance is my growth itch at the moment.
That's beautifully said. I definitely resonate with that challenge. It's a really good one to try to work on.
Thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for taking the time. It was really interesting and fun to go a little bit back into like the early self-management days and dive into some of those challenges that have emerged. And looking forward to continuing to follow what you're doing and see how we keep intersecting.
Absolutely. Thanks, Fran.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and follow this podcast and share it with your friends and colleagues. You can learn more about Greaterthan on our website, greaterthan.works. To stay in the loop about new episodes, events, and more, make sure to sign up for our newsletter. Until next time.